what's helped me develop my craft is working with people, I think. Working with different actors, writers, directors, practitioners generally, and seeing what I wanted to emulate and what I didn't want to emulate, I guess. The Office was easily one of my happiest jobs, really. I'm very proud of it, and I'm very pleased to have been a part of it. Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, as writers and directors, were new and untried, and everything that they and we were doing at the time felt like a new adventure, really. That was a big part of where I learned to hone my craft, actually. The same with all the cast. Ricky and Stephen liked what we were bringing. Do you know what I mean? Because while at the same, I would never underestimate or try and take away from what those two did on that show, because it was truly phenomenal. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. In the rest of the cast's defence, I will say that they cast us because they liked what we did, because you needed to navigate your way through something that was natural and funny. And it's tough to get people to navigate that way just to the truth and be funny, not accidentally, but be funny as a byproduct of the true situation rather than heading for the funny bit. And I think that's what The Office did really, really well. I went up for the part of Bilbo in early 2010, I think early 2010. I was doing Sherlock at the time, and half of Britain was going up for Bilbo and the film generally. So I went up for it. Mark Gatiss went up for it. Ben Cumberbatch went up for it, for different parts. But I know a lot of people who went up for Bilbo. But when I got to the screen test or whatever, when I got to put myself on tape, I had a very nice note in that office from Guillermo del Toro, who at that time was going to be directing it, saying, "Please do this well, we want this to be you." Now, assuming he wasn't writing that to everybody, I kind of thought, well, that's a nice vote of confidence. And I'd never really given it much thought, I have to say. I'd never read Lord of the Rings. I liked the films, but I wasn't sort of soaked in that culture, So it was a very nice bonus that I got there, and Guillermo, the director, wanted me to do it. And so when it changed directors from Guillermo to Peter, Guillermo sent me a nice message saying, "Look, you're going to hear things coming out in the press soon about a change of captain of this ship, but just want you to know you are still definitely our favourite. You're the only person we are really considering." And so while the other sort of, Hollywood names were being sort of thrown around as possible Bilbos, I had it from the artistic team that I was the person they wanted. So that was really lovely. I really do never consider expectations. I honestly don't. Because I think it's hard enough getting up at really, really early hours of the day and just having, a lot of hours ahead of you playing that part and just being knackered all the time. That's enough. Doing the work is enough. If you then allow yourself to take on the other stuff, I don't know, it's too much work. It's too much pressure. Fortunately for me, I don't really do a lot of social media. 10 years ago, I did even less. So I wasn't inviting that into my life, put it that way. Because the truth is, whoever's going to play a part, or whoever's going to write something or direct something, there are going to be people who like it and people who don't. And of course, I'm not some people's idea of Bilbo Baggins and never will be. That's totally valid and fine. All you can do really is your bit and do it as well as you can to satisfy primarily yourself, and then the artistic team of the film, and then the fans. You can't start with an audience reaction and work your way back. Do you know what I mean? You have to start with the thing you want to make and then hope that people like it. And some people will and some people won't. And that is true of every single artistic endeavour ever. I was sent Fargo. We were making series 3 of Sherlock. It was very gratifying, I guess, to get an offer for something that people didn't normally associate me with. I read the first episode and it was brilliant. I had liked the film, but I hadn't seen the film since it had come out, really. I knew it was interesting. I knew it was very well written. It had a feeling of the Coens without being the Coens. And I was going to be working with Billy Bob Thornton, who I love. And the scenes between Lester and Lorne Malvo, Billy's character, they were too good to turn down, really. You know. The accent I worked very hard on, you know. As you do, you have to. So I had a couple of sessions before we went out to film. And then I had a dialect coach on set every day, yeah. And then if I was away for a couple of weeks, there were a couple of YouTube videos I would watch of just Minnesota guys. You know, because a lot of the time you try and look at accents on YouTube and it's an actor doing it. I wasn't interested in that. I just wanted some bloke talking, you know, just to key into those elongated vowel sounds and stuff that are in Minnesota. They try and keep it true but not cartoony, but also honour the fact that those vowel sounds and that accent is different. I get great pleasure in committing to something and just staying in it. So with something like those accents, I will stay in that accent all day that I'm at work. From the moment I'm picked up to the moment that they call a wrap for the day, I'll be speaking in that accent, not in that character. I won't be called Lester at makeup, but I'll be Martin, but I'll be Martin speaking in that accent. And for me, that is the equivalent of an athlete warming up. You know what I mean? You wouldn't do a 100-metre sprint if you didn't stretch. I guess the challenge for Sherlock and John as characters is where you take it and how you take it there. On the one hand, a show and the audience wants development, and it wants to be able to move over there if it wants, or, you know, to go over there and show you bits that you haven't seen before. On the other hand, Sherlock Holmes is one of the most famous figures in English literature. If you get too far away from who Sherlock Holmes is in all our collective imagination, then you've sort of let people down, or you've gone too far away from it. The first script of that was one of the best scripts I've ever read. It was exciting, it was smart, it was fast-moving, and it expected the audience to be intelligent. They're not just recreating Conan Doyle, they are taking that as a template and making something lovely and creative with it themselves. But ultimately, you can only do so much with it, actually, you know. I can't ever be cleverer than Ben. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen. My role is very defined, as is his. You know, we can't sort of swap them round or whatever. I think Stephen and Mark have managed to play with that more than anybody else has in the tellings of these stories. And it's been more unexpected, I think, than any other telling that I've ever seen. What's great for me, of course, because I'm not playing Sherlock Holmes, is it's two main characters. You know, it's not like there's Sherlock Holmes and then way down there somewhere there's Dr. Watson. It's very much a double act, you know. The show is called Sherlock, clearly. I'm not under any illusion about that. It's still slanted towards Sherlock Holmes, as it has to be. But considering I was not playing Sherlock Holmes, I had a good old crack of the whip on it. And it was absolutely delightful to experience that, yeah. Black Panther came about, I spoke to Marvel head honcho Kevin Feige, again, while we were doing... No, it wasn't while we were doing Sherlock, actually. I was doing something else. Not everything happens while I'm doing Sherlock. And I was offered to play Everett Ross. I read the script and I was very pleased that it had politics in it, I guess. I do like Marvel films, because I like Marvel films because they do have a sort of, for all their superhero-ness, they're also sort of rooted to a reality as well. It was also very exciting because we knew that it was a film that was going to have an audience. A, because it's a Marvel film. B, because it's the first mainly black Marvel film. And there's a lot of people very hungry for that. And I was meeting a lot of them. A lot of people I already knew, a lot of people I didn't know were telling me I can't wait for that. And then when it hit, of course, it exceeded all of our expectations. You know, it was huge. I guess it's the only film I've made where people have wanted to tell me, made a point of telling me how many times they'd seen it, you know. Several people have just come up to me independent and told me, offered that, you know. in a way that felt different from other films I'd made, you know. Because you can watch any film over and over again, and there are lots of films that I watch over and over again, but this felt almost like medicine for people, you know.